I'll be talking about land leases in Oromia regional state of Ethiopia. I'll look at the processes and the outcomes through the lens of environmental justice. So this will be the content briefly. I don't know how much I can cover in this short present time, but let me introduce what Ethiopia looks like as a federation of 9 regional states and 2 city administrations. The focus of mine being Oromia regional state, the largest regional state in terms of population, as well as land coverage. Introducing the topic itself, I look at premises that is forwarded when the state starts to engage people in leasing their land, the land they have been using in their surrounding, as a way of justifying investments for the better good, for the general public, for the good of the general public. And that is placed with the idea of presenting it as a development opportunity in general. Then specific promises are delivered also when companies and the state engage people in consultation. That consultation I question for definitely some reasonable grounds. I will talk about that briefly. I will also explore this in relation to the premises and the promises, in relation to the lived realities of the people. What did they live through after leasing their land, after the state leased their land to the investors, foreign investors as well as domestic investors. So in this particular study, I will present 2 land lease cases, and my premise is that livelihood outcomes of any land lease or land transaction, large-scale land deal, would automatically be the result, a cumulative of the change in access to livelihood resources. It would also be explained in terms of extra local development opportunities that the investment may bring about, but also the process through which the outcomes have become the reality to be lived through. Again, as I said, these I will look through them, through these issues through the lens of social environmental justice. As a way of starting that piece, I will quote Amartya Sen, who said, "What moves us reasonably enough is not the realization that the world falls short of being completely just, which few of us expect, but that there are clearly remediable injustices around us which we want to eliminate." And this, for me, actually juxtaposes dystopia of the world we live in and probably leveled or different levels of utopias. For some, this is a completely idealistic world of no injustice at all. For some, it is a matter of remedying some injustice components to make it a better one, right? Then dystopia is, utopia is in fact possible only if we expand this utopia, world of utopia, on the space that has been occupied by dystopias. And the trick is simple. It is a matter of replacing the this with you. And that is only to relate it to the main theme of the conference we are participating in. I will place this also within the context of what is undergoing in Ethiopia, what is taking place in Ethiopia. I consider it as a significant political economic reform in which the new leadership has declared its intention to democratize, and the popular protest that motivated the ongoing change and reform, in fact, subsided amidst diverse expectations and uncertainties. That said, I would like to see the ongoing reform in Ethiopia as a result of persistent resistance by the people in response to unjust processes and policies, including but not limited to the governance of environmental resources. To reconstruct the country's polity on new grounds of justice would entail for me to address the questions of environmental justice. This should be considered as a building block of new Ethiopia that is being advocated for. That said, I will not talk much about the theory of environmental justice, social environmental justice in my case, simply because of time, but if there is any interest, we can come back to that. But I would like to mention a few things. The concepts that make up environmental justice for me are overall redistribution, something that comes at the end of a process of land lease in this case, and also the way people are represented in the process of this land lease representation, which of course is also related to the recognition that has been bestowed or denied as far as the people are concerned, and the participation that would allow them to make significant decision, to make a significant role, to play a significant role in the decision that is finally taken. So environmental justice is technically composed of procedural justice and distributive justice. The procedural component built by recognition and representation, which is linked to the issue of participation, meaningful participation, and which unfolds in certain ways of resource redistribution. In tandem, they all determine or influence the possibilities or impossibilities of social recovery. What people could do afterwards will be actually implied by the process that comes into the land lease itself, and what ends up as a way of fair or unfair redistribution of environmental resources, costs as well as benefits. So my current research actually, as I implied, looks at the process and outcomes which I think together imply the impact of land leases, but I consider processes as important in their own, outcomes are also important in their own, but also as a matter of their interaction. Processes are and outcomes do interact in producing certain impacts. I will not really be able to explain what I mean by this, but simply to present it. Now, again, I will briefly say two things here. One, the land lease cases that I will present, I will use as a way of studying this issue of land environmental justice is based on two land lease cases. One is land lease leased by Karuturi Agro Products PLC. It is an Indian, it is formed by investors of Indian origin, Karuturi. And the other one is domestic and named Jacaranda. It is a share company. My data are both qualitative and quantitative. I would in fact apply mixed methods approach. I use the quantification to see the magnitude of loss or gain, if any. I look at the qualitative interviews as a way of addressing what it means for the people to gain or lose certain resources and access to resources, and also as a way of giving voice to the voiceless in the process of the land leases. This is an abundant site of Karuturi, and you can see, actually, by the time I was collecting data, the Karaturi has run into problems, a lot of problems with the local people, with even the local government, even with the national government. And the site was abandoned. By that time, they have stopped their operation after 4 or 5 years of operation. They could not run it anymore. This is the domestic share company, Jacaranda, in a nearby village. I will very quickly go through the quantitative results and come to the qualitative aspects of the process. The people, prior to the investment, the people were using it primarily, the land, for different purposes, but for this, in relation to this double, for crop production, but also for livestock grazing. So at least majority of the people were using it for at least one of these two purposes, crop production and or grazing, in both villages. Now one village is Bajara Odagibe, the first one, that's the column that you see over here. And the second column is Odagibe. They are both using it to a great extent. Now, because they were using the land, and the land was taken away from them and leased to the people, they have lost a considerable size of their farmland as measured in hectares. And I will quickly go through slides as well. A reduction in access to farmland as measured in hectares. This is descriptively explained. This has translated into a reduction in the production of the different crops that they used to produce, and you can see the gap between the level of production before and after the land lease. Again, as a proxy for livestock production, access to grazing land is also declined substantially, and the decline in tropical livestock units would also tell a lot about the difference before and after land lease as measured on average level. To see this briefly again, whether this sample results would tell something about the population of the villages, I run some inferential statistics, and it really shows substantially significant, highly significant results as far as comparisons of land size and different crop types before and after the land lease. Okay? Yes. Again, what came as an outcome is also deforestation. I don't have time to dwell on that, but if you look at the name of the villages, Odagibe and Bajara Odagibe, Oda is actually frequently mentioned in different villages in that area to indicate the significance of Oda tree, which is culturally very important in Oromo culture, people residing in that area. And also I would like to mention this hill, which people used to call Tulusa, the mountain of cattle, or probably because it's not that big, the hill of cattle, and they were using it before for different purposes, but the company especially Karaturi built the residence for its staff in this hill, which is not technically part of the concession that was granted to Karaturi in the first place. Again, there are a lot of dissatisfaction connected to this. So I will go to the last few slides. I will not discuss about employment, income issues, and so on for lack of time. I will look at the process. When they came in, they promised a lot of things. I can mention them if they are of interest to you. But I would also mention this issue of consultation without representation. When people are not represented the way they want to be represented, which is in fact influenced by people's recognition or misrecognition of people's way of life, then that is problematic. You can't expect consultation to be meaningful in a context of when the state has all the power to lease land at any cost. Now, I would like to think of a utopia in terms of people-society relations, even if that dichotomy is not anymore encouraged, in terms of virtuous circle of justice as opposed to vicious circle of injustice. That is what I'm trying to develop at the moment. I will take only a few seconds to say a few words about the conclusion. People's access to livelihood resources has declined substantially. What has declined along with this is in fact also their way of life, which is also based on land. Land-based social relations have been compromised substantially. But a full understanding of the outcomes of such leases would be understood only if we also know what comes into the process as a matter of, as explained by what I call process indicators pertaining to environmental justice, representation, recognition, participation. So I will leave you here. Thank you for your attention.